Well, now this, a jury has been selected in the case of an Iraq War veteran accused of killing Navy SEAL Chris Kyle and his friend Chad Littlefield. Family members of Eddie Ray Routh say he suffers from PTSD and his attorney is planning an insanity defense. But given the pretrial publicity for American Sniper, can he actually get a fair trial? We're going to ask Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano that very question. Can he?
You know, the judge will tell the jury that you have to evaluate the facts in this case, irrespective of what you think about the victim, because the government's entitled to a fair trial and the defendant is entitled to a fair trial, and the law is the same, whether the victim is a hero or a goat. Is that going to sink into the jury, or are they moved and motivated by the story, the incredible story of the victim, and is that going to affect the outcome of the case? So that's one issue. The other issue is this post-traumatic stress disorder syndrome. In some states, the government must prove that you are sane. In Texas, you have the affirmative obligation to prove that you are insane. So what this means is the defendant has to demonstrate to a jury by clear and convincing evidence that he thought he was shooting at the Taliban when he shot at Chris Kyle. I don't know that that's a believable argument, but there's going to be a lot of psychiatric testimony about the problems in his head.
If he's using that, you never saw Battlefield. Okay? If he's using
was never
that,
there.
if indeed he can prove psychological problems before he enlisted, would that come into play here?
Yes. Yes. There are a lot of triggers. Listen, I'm obviously not an expert in the psychiatry here, but there are triggers of post-traumatic stress disorder, things that make it come out in addition to being in the stress of battle. Look, everybody admits that he pulled the trigger. Everybody admits that he killed these two guys, one of whom has become this heroic figure, in part because of the movie, in part because of what he did. The question is, what was in his head? So the whole case is what lawyers call a swearing match between experts. The government's experts saying he was sane enough to know what he was doing. His experts to say he thought he was shooting at Taliban.
Judge, if they decide that he can't get a fair trial, isn't that setting a precedent for anyone who's popular, who's a celebrity? They can do things and say, look, I can't get a fair trial. What does it mean when he can't get a fair trial? What's the next step?
It means that he can't get a fair trial now because of all the publicity about the movie. So they could easily wait 6 months. The other thing is for the judge, and I presume the judge in this case has done it, I myself have had to do that, is to interrogate these people, potential jurors, very, very carefully about the slightest little bias they might have because of the movie and because of Chris Kyle's story. Remember, you don't have to find a stadium full of neutral people. You only have to find a little bit more than 12, 14 or 16. I honestly don't know how many alternates they have in Texas, but the most you'd have to find is 16. It's painstaking, but it can probably be done. But in a case like this, where the defendant is already in jail, is probably guilty, the defense probably will not work, there's no harm in waiting until all the publicity about the movie and all the goodwill about Chris Kyle sort of passes into people's memories.
And of course, if this guy is then convicted, that's going to be his grounds for appeal. He couldn't get a fair trial because of the movie, because of everything.
Steve, that's a superb argument, and that's the reason that some really good prosecutors will want to delay the trial because they don't want to have to try it twice. They would just as soon get rid of the impediment of how can we try this case in the excitement about the movie.
Judge, thank you very much.
Great
Pleasure,
insight,
guys.
Judge.